Hey, it's Joel. We build a lot of cool things here on the channel, and one of the things that I've been teasing, and it's been a long time coming, is Thanos' sword from Endgame. First up, spoiler warning! If you haven't seen Endgame yet, you should, and we're going to talk about Endgame and what happens in Endgame. So if you haven't seen it yet, pause the video, go watch it, come back, and then continue.
2 hours later.
Hey, welcome back. I'm glad you've made it back. I hope you enjoyed the movie. I sure did as well. So Endgame was great, and Thanos has this really cool sword. It's scale, it's like 8.5 feet long. Daryl, you know him as the broken nerd, he modeled this sword and he put out the call to people saying, hey, are you crazy enough to print this? I answered the call because I am crazy enough. So we've printed it. Now we need to put it together, and I really want to show it to you because it's freaking huge. We're gonna do it right here on 3D Printing Nerd. Oh, crap. Oh, look at this. These are all the spools from the build here. This is a bigger spool at the bottom. And these aren't as big at the top. Then we had a little bit left of that one. That's yellow. Whew, boy, these are Polymaker spools. And the reason I used Polymaker, these are Polymaker spools. These are Raise3D spools. Raise3D PLA is Polymaker PLA. So I thought, hey, let's use the Raise3D spools that came with the machine, and let's use all my Polymaker PLA, and let's use what was left over of the Makeshaper filament. The Makeshaper stuff was what I printed the hairy lion with. This was Colorfabb PLA PHA, I think. It was, we printed this with it, but we also used some of this filament in the Thanos sword, and then some Maker Gear filament. All of this stuff actually contributed to the pieces, which I'm sure you want to see, so let's get them out. Here it is. This is it. This is all of the pieces of the Thanos sword, and it's fantastic. Each of the blades on either side are 5 pieces, and the total print time for all of this is weeks. It was weeks of 24-hour printing to get this done. Some of the prints were done together, and so I know the Raise3D Pro 2 Plus, which is what I printed all of these on. Some of the multi-prints took 7 or 8 days long. I know that the Raise3D machine isn't the fastest, but it's consistent, and that's why I kind of went with it. Let's talk about the blades, and then we'll talk about the hilt, and then we'll talk about how we're going to put them all together. This one is the bottom of the blade. So how it works, these pieces are the top of the hilt, and the blade slots in just like that, and it's a really great connection. That'll probably be 3D glooped.
There's no probably about that.
Okay, there we go. This piece goes like that. Goodness, this piece like this piece like this, and that piece is gonna go like that. This is one of the blades. Each of the pieces of the blades, they have a hole here, and a hole here, and what we can do is use doweling. The holes don't go through all the way, they go down a couple inches, so about that much. And that much into each piece, and then we can use 3D gloop to tie them all together. This is a piece that I printed as a test. These are actually split by Daryl, and the reason I had him do it is because I was trying to do it in multiple 3D modeling programs, but they would crash my computer every time. So I said, Daryl, could you put a 1/2-inch barrel kind of through all of the hilt and then slice it up in this way so I could print it with minimal supports? And he said, sure, Joel, no problem. It worked out great. But as a test, I did this one on the Prusa Mark III, which means because of the height that it's at, the bottom of the sword can actually sit right here, and it won't tip over. Just to give you an idea of how tall this is. Oh my goodness, it is 45 Freedom Units tall. There's going to be 2 of these on either side of the hilt. So, like I said, the hilt has a 1/2-inch kind of barrel through it, and we've got this 1/2-inch dowel, and it should kind of go all the way. It's just the tip of the dowel right now, and it doesn't go through, but if we work it and we kind of pound at it over and over, it'll probably get all the way through and into the hole. There we go, just gotta work it. But this dowel should be long enough. And with that, we'll be able to put these 2 pieces together and then the ends on either side. And once that's all together, this will be 3D glooped, and then the dowel will hold it all together. So once we have this together, and once we have this blade together, and once we have this blade together, then we're gonna talk about how we're gonna finish it. And I have an idea, but I'm gonna keep it kind of secret for now. Let's get this done, and I'll see you in a bit. So it's gonna hold it all together. That looks pretty good.
Do you think that Joel Telling of the Marvel Cinematic Universe printed this?
I don't know. I hope I could be helpful to the Avengers or to the, making sure the Earth is safe. But I don't know if I could 3D print my way into the Avengers. I think. Well, I mean, Hawkeye's an Avenger, so I could be an Avenger.
Oh.
Ha-ha!
Nice.
Perfect. Look at the size of this thing.
It
I mean, seriously.
Giant. It's giant.
I don't know if you can see right there. So I made this a little bit longer just so I'd have enough room to hit. And right here on the hilt, it's poked through a little bit too much, so that would interfere with the blades going in. But what I can do is take a saw or a file or something. I have a Dremel or a mini tool and kind of carve that out. Same thing I can do right here. So the hilt we can move to the side. Now what we can do is actually use this part right here. This is that part of the hilt that I printed as a test piece before Daryl modified the hilt for me. It's like this. It kind of has the same cuts. It's just a little bit lower, which means these pieces can fit just like this. It makes it a lot easier to assemble because these pieces can now sit flat and I can build it up rather than having to balance it or lay it on its side.
Yes.
Like, I don't have room to put it. I'm gonna have to drop it down to this table.
Yeah.
Look at that. Both of these are done now, and they're extraordinarily awesome. If you just kind of hold it like this, they are a weapon in that they are just heavy like crazy. So what we've got the two blades and we've got the hilt. So we're close, but we're not done yet because these need to be primed, sanded, and painted. So at this point, you're probably wondering, because I did say I've got a custom paint job, thinking about it, let me know what you think down in the comments at this point. Pause the video and type out your thought. And then go back and edit the comment when the video's over and see if you were correct. But I'd love to hear your guess as to how I'm going to paint this monstrosity of an awesome weapon. I'll keep it balanced, like all things should be, but I'd love to hear your guess. So go ahead, put a comment down below, tell me what your guess is, and then at the end of the video, go down and edit your comment and tell me if you were right or not, or what you think. See you in a few.
Day 2.
Both of the blades are now adhered pretty well. The 3D gloop does an amazing job, as we've shown in the past, but I mean, look at that. It is, it's not even cracking. It's not even cracking. One of the things, though, that we do have to take care of are the gaps. And 3D prints, sometimes they lift off the bed, sometimes the corner comes up. And I think it's best shown like this right here, this gap. So this part of the print was down and this part was down, and it lifted off the bed just slightly. So that needs to be filled in along with little other corners, if you will, on both of the blades. And we're gonna use a very special technique for that I did kind of learn from Bill Duran over at Punished Props.
He's so smart.
He's a smart person. You get some silicone. This is actually from Bill. And so when they do silicone molds, if they have leftover silicone, they're just gonna pour it out and make a mat. What's great about silicone, nothing really sticks to it. In fact, here's some old glue right here from eons ago, and it doesn't stick to it. So what we're gonna do is use super glue. This is Glue Boost. They sent me some super glue because they wanted me to try it out. So we're gonna try it out. And then I've got baby powder. If you mix baby powder and super glue together on a silicone mat, you can make a paste, and that paste then goes into the cracks and the crevices that you need to fill in. And what's great is once the super glue cures, it hardens and becomes a solid mass, it's sandable. And we'll be able to fill in a gap. It has adhesion properties, so it'll be able to hold it together pretty well, and then we'll be able to sand it smooth. Not like Bill Duran smooth, but like...
Nobody gets that smooth.
No, nobody can get that smooth, not without work. So let's get started. So I've never actually done this before. We're gonna just see what happens. I would imagine the super glue is gonna cure at a certain rate. I don't know what that rate is. This is a very runny, liquidy super glue, and I think that will make quick work of this baby powder. I don't know how much to use. Come on out. Look, whoa.
It's a little shy.
It's a shy bladder. I've got some popsicle sticks, tongue depressor type things to mix it up. Honestly, I don't know what's gonna happen. I would imagine I just kind of put some glue in there and then I mix it up. My guess is I used a lot of glue and not enough baby powder. So let's do that. I want to make it a paste, almost like an Elmer's glue. I think that would be the proper consistency, because you want it to go into a place and then you want it to stay in that place. Okay, there we go. That's pretty good.
That's pretty, yeah.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty goopy.
We're going to start on that one right there. Oh, look at that. It's getting into that crevice there. And
that will cure and harden and then be sandable?
Yeah, and as long as I don't glue myself to myself, I'm going to get gloves. I'm going to get gloves. If we look here, it looks decent. It looks like it's doing exactly what we wanted it to do. I think we're getting a really good result here. Cool. I know Uncle Jesse, some people use wood filler, I think, for stuff like this. And I know there's the green kind of a pasty stuff that Volpin Props and Bill used, but we're gonna do this method. All right, let me go get some gloves, and then I'm gonna fill in these gaps. We'll see how it looks at the end. There we go, we've got it covered. We ended up switching from the super glue and the baby powder to this 3M Acryl Green glazing putty. This is the stuff that Bill and Harrison over at Volpin Props has recommended usage of. The super glue was kind of good. I don't know if I was getting a reaction from it, just because I've never used the Glue Boost stuff before, but I started sneezing like a crazy person, so we turned on the fan. That helped. My guess is you should probably always use some sort of personal protection gear, but we made it work. And instead of mixing here the whole time, I would actually put some glue on the model and then sprinkle some baby powder on it and mix it right there. That seemed to work pretty well. The glazing putty spread really well. That was, I don't know, that looks great right there. And that'll be super easy to sand as well. That's got to set, I think, for a few hours, just in case. The glue stuff's already dry and cured. This stuff, we're gonna let it set for a few hours, but this means we have time to go to the garage and take care of this. This is the hilt and the handle. You can see the dowel is still right there. So what I'm gonna do is use my Multi-Master tool to cut down along these surfaces right here, make it an even flush cut, that side as well, and then each side of the sword will be able to attach to either side of the hilt and the handle. So let's head down to the garage and do that. This is the fine Multi-Master. I bought this years and years and years ago. It's a great tool. This just oscillates back and forth, as you can see. Well, here, I'll turn it down maybe. There you go. Not as loud, but you can see, maybe not, it's going back and forth in that direction. So this is great for doing plunge cuts, or in the case of this, taking it along there and plunging down into the wood. I'm gonna make it go a little bit faster, and no takebacks, no overdos, or no do-overs, overdos. It's not a library book. I'll clean it up a little bit, but I wanted to explain. When the blade's going through the wood, it's going through so fast that, well, maybe someone else can tell me. It's either burning it because it's going too fast, or the blade isn't sharp enough and it's causing friction, which is causing smoke. What I'm gonna do is turn it down to the low setting, and we'll clean it up. Maybe it'll be less smoke. That's not too bad. I did dig into the plastic a little bit, but this is all going to be covered up with the blade and with glue and with whatever else. So that's actually not too bad. There we go. That's nice and clean there. And I think we're at the point where we can do a test assembly and just see how massive it is. And then we got to sand and paint. That should be fun. Before we go any further, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is something I forgot to get footage of. Once we had the model sprayed with the filler primer, we were able to sand it down, and then we used this acryl green glazing putty. The putty was used to fill in the gaps that the filler primer couldn't get to, and then we sanded this all down, and once we sanded this all down, we were able to spray it with the regular primer. It's just a standard thing that happens. I forgot to tell you that in the beginning, but now you know. It's filler primer, sand it down, fill in the gaps with the putty, sand it down, regular primer. And there you go. So that's where we're at with the blades. Originally, the plan was not to do anything to this. I was just going to prime it and paint it. But there were sections that were not together fully. And I had plenty of this acryl green glazing putty. So I ended up putting some right here, 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 here. I mean, just in all sorts of places. And it's a sword, like Sean and I talked about off camera, and so it's not the cleanest thing in the world. And obviously, Thanos' hands are probably dirty, and I mean, stained with the blood of his enemies, so it's going to be dirty in real life. I'm not worried about a lot of this stuff here, but what we're gonna do now is set this out in the sun. We're gonna let it cure so that this, and this, and this, and this is nice and hard, and then we can sand it. It'll be smooth, we'll be able to hit it with the primer, and then we paint it. Let's go put it in the sun.
Hello. On behalf of Joel. Line. Subscribe to 3D Printing Nerd. Okay. Here it is, you goobers.
Bathroom, teleport to Bill's! It fits. Hey, Bill!
Joel, how'd you get
Not your
in
bathroom,
here?
but look what I made.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that bathroom teleporter works great.
That really does. That was the maiden voyage. Sure am glad that you came back in one piece.
You want to see my sword?
I do.
Here it is.
Perfect.
So this is Thanos' sword. This is actually done by Daryl, Broken Nerd.
Oh, that's
you know
awesome.
Daryl.
Daryl's a cool guy. It's longer than my workbench by a wide margin.
It's really, it is probably one of the biggest things I've ever 3D printed other than the RC car.
Yep.
One of the interesting things though, let's show Sean here.
Oh.
I only finished one side of it.
See that, yeah.
So the whole point of this was that A, I wanted to make a big sword.
Mm-hmm.
B, I wanted it to be able to show people how the process works.
Yeah.
So on the other side,
And you only had to do half the sanding.
I only had to do half the sanding. So it's a bunch of different pieces,
Yep.
and it was printed on my Raise3D Pro 2 Plus. I used some acryl green here. I know you and Harrison love
That's
that
the good
stuff.
stuff.
I also tried super glue and baby powder. It's a lot harder to sand.
It is. It makes a really nice bond, though.
Yeah, well, that's true.
It is really, really good. You do have to give it a little elbow grease, though.
What's really interesting, so right here, where the two blades go into the hilt, there was a gap.
Oh.
And just because of the size and the printers, I think when Daryl made it, he just, it wasn't perfect. It was a little bit of a gap, depending on how printers make it. So what I did is I measured it, and I made a square in PLA. I printed it out. That was the thickness of that gap.
Right.
And then I used something called 3D Gloop to adhere all this stuff together. It essentially, it welds PLA together.
That's good.
So it just becomes one piece.
So you basically created your own shim stock at a specific thickness, and then you just cut it to shape.
In PLA, so that it could all bond. So this is all one piece.
Oh, that's fantastic. There's a lot of fog coming out of that bathroom still.
The bathroom teleporter, like you said, it's the maiden voyage, and
those are all the nanoparticles. It's just, if it gets foggy over here, it's because we dumped a lot of fog into that bathroom.
It's better than the other nanoparticles that could be coming out of that room.
Yes, it is.
I weathered it a bit.
You did.
I weathered it a bit.
Looks like you added some blood.
I did because Thanos obviously slays lots of his enemies.
Yeah,
and
that's part of the weathering is really like the storytelling of prop making. So when you see all this red blood on here, you're like, boy, I bet this guy murdered someone whose blood was red.
Well, I mean, half the universe at one point.
Yeah. Well, not all the universe has red blood.
That's true.
If you really wanted to do some storytelling, you could have some green blood or some blue blood.
I thought about that, but I got to a point where I thought it looked good.
Yeah.
I thought about taking like a paintbrush and doing the spatter sort of thing. But what I did is I washed it with black, and then I added bright red to the black that was left, and I mixed it up, and that's where you got this kind of this darker stuff. Yeah. This right here. So one of the issues we run into with this blade is the weight, and
it's pretty big.
Some of the pieces don't exactly adhere together perfectly, even though we tried putting them together. So you'll notice there's some separation.
A little bit of
just
separation,
a little bit. But the goal of this again wasn't to actually take it to a con and slay anyone. It was to be a showcase. Whereas if I wanted to take it to a con, I would use foam.
That's a pretty good idea. It'd be a lot lighter and more durable. This thing is awesome and gigantic, but if you were carrying it around, odds are good you're going to bump into something.
Or someone.
And you may hurt a person if you run into a person, and you may break your prop. I would call this more of a stay-at-home piece. Maybe put it up on the wall.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to talk to my audience about, though, is that I don't aim for perfection. What I want to do is just get better each and every time. And I mean, we've made props before, and I think I did better this time. But what are some things that I could improve on for the next build?
Sure. A big thing when it comes to weathering, right? Again, when you're thinking about the storytelling, if this thing got covered in mud or blood or whatever, that liquid would creep down into all the dark recesses, the deep recesses of your prop, all these low spots down here. So those are the places you want to make sure you definitely have your weathering paint. And what you have to do is take your brush and just mash it into those details. So if you look down, I can see spots that are clean, still a little clean in there. And that low spot is exactly the place where it would be the most dirty. So when you see a couple of spots peeking out, just light spots in there, you could go back, do another pass with your weathering paint and just darken those up a little bit. So for example, like right here, there's this crevice, this low spot right there is bare. And that corner in there, that's where the blood would accumulate. And you would want to make sure that you drive the paint down into those details.
So take that brush and really mash it into places.
And when I do that kind of work, I use a cheap chip brush. I buy them by the 100. And I just mash them in there with lots of paint. And then when I'm done with that paintbrush, I throw it away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Savage.
Very aggressive.
What?
But do you get the notion there?
I understand what you're saying, and that's great because I haven't weathered much. I've sanded more now.
Oh, yeah.
And I've painted more now, but I haven't weathered as much. And so that's great advice for weathering, and especially just being aggressive with that chip brush and getting it in there.
Yep.
Is there anything on this build that you see that you said, wow, you did a really good job? Or is there anything on here that's unexpected?
Projects like this often get started and rarely get finished. So just the fact that you brought it to the finish line is very, very impressive. But I can also tell, like, you've been upping your sanding game. If we look here, you have large flat areas. Not perfect, but definitely a really good effort.
But better.
Yeah. And I try and do the same thing too with every single project. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just want to make sure I keep improving.
Well, thanks, Bill.
You got it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, let's just wrap it up here.
Okay.
Thanks for everybody that followed along with this build. A big thanks for Bill for the inspiration.
You got
and
it.
For always pushing me to be better. I know I've got some other projects that we've collaborated on that I still need to finish. So we'll get those done. If you want more information on prop and costume building and possibly using foam, how could they go about finding you?
Everything's over at punishedprops.com, Punished Props Academy on YouTube, and we are doing all sorts of really fun prop and costume projects. Got one I just finished yesterday that I cannot wait to share with everyone.
Well, they'll have to go and subscribe to see it.
Absolutely.
Well, hug each other more. I love you all. And as always, high five.
It's awesome! Yes!
It didn't break!
Woohoo!